Data entry jobs can be some of the most mind-numbing work you can do, and that's exactly what Dead Letter Dept capitalizes on. Created by Mike Monroe of Belief Engine and published earlier this year, Dead Letter Dept is a short indie horror game where you play as a data conversion operator for the Postal Service. This fancy title essentially means that you spend your days typing out addresses that the automated postal system can't read. On the surface, this sounds like a fairly standard position, but you quickly discover that the job isn't as simple as that. You've recently moved to a new city, and the game begins with you writing a letter that decides what backstory your protagonist has. Are you writing to your lover, lamenting how you had to leave town? Or are you writing to a parent, cursing where you've come from and swearing never to come back? No matter what flavor you choose, the outcome is the same. You're running from something, which has led you to an unfamiliar city where you get a tip that leads you into this data entry position. After a while of working for the company, your office has moved to a warehouse in the middle of nowhere. This is where the game begins. You'll immediately notice that the game has a unique look to it. There's this visual grain effect that makes everything feel grimy, and the shadows look even darker. Thanks to YouTube compression and recording quality, this video likely won't do it justice. While the majority of your time spent with the game is in front of a computer, the walk to and from work every day cements how bleak the city truly is. You're working the night shift, which means the sun is never up and you never see any of your neighbors. Adding to the oppressive visual atmosphere, the audio design is fantastic. While walking through the apartment building, you'll often hear strange noises and arguments being muffled by the walls. As the game progresses and the story becomes more sinister, the sound design becomes the star of the show. The apartment building itself was probably my favorite part of the game. It almost feels like you're walking through the world of Eraserhead, with the grey industrial surroundings and oppressive sound. In general, this game reminded me a lot of classic horror, probably due to a combination of the story and the visuals creating this eerie setting. The music also deserves a special mention. It's got a perfect blend of industrial noise and creepy melancholy that fits the game so well. I was shocked to see just how many unique tracks the developer managed to fit into such a short game, and they really stick with you. As stated already, the majority of your 2-hour playtime with Dead Letter Dept is spent at your desk. Once you reach work, you're sent a queue of undeliverable post, and it's your job to type whatever the computer highlights. Most of the time, this is simply handwritten addresses that the computer can't read. Once you type the address correctly, you can move on to the next letter. Sometimes the address isn't fully visible, which is where the autocomplete function comes in. After typing enough information, the game will give you the rest of the address by pressing Ctrl-T. For the most part, the gameplay is like a calmer version of Typing of the Dead, as there's no penalty for taking your time. Eventually, the game does ramp up in difficulty with a few timed segments that test your typing skills, but these aren't unbeatable. While the typing can lead you into a bit of a flow state, the gameplay isn't going to win any awards, and it mainly exists as a distraction so that the game can scare you. As you spend more time typing, things get a little bit strange. It might start with the computer highlighting a postcard message rather than the address, and eventually entire articles pop up in your queue. These include some creepy depictions of historical deaths, which you're expected to reproduce faithfully before moving on. The entire time you're typing, the sound design is once again doing incredible work. The view of your computer takes up the majority of your screen, but there's just enough free space around it that you might think you spotted something at the corner of your eye when the lights flicker, or hear strange noises coming from directly behind you. Over the course of the game's 6 days, your task becomes progressively more sinister, and the difficulty level increases. The power threatens to go, text will refuse to stay still, and while the consequences for not finishing your queue isn't made clear, you don't want to find out what they are. If it isn't obvious by now, Dead Letter Dept excels in atmosphere. It's an incredibly unnerving game, and forcing the player to focus on text closely leads to a lot of fun jump scare moments, although it never takes it too far. The scariest moments for me were much more subtle. Shadows drifting past windows, and noises over your shoulder while you work. One of the clearest inspirations for this game is obviously Silent Hill. It's hard to find an indie horror game that isn't inspired by Silent Hill in some way, but the font and images that pop up while reading letters are lifted directly from the PS2 era games. More importantly, it also fits into the indie horror game trend of menial work-based horror. A lot of games force you to do menial tasks in order to progress, like working in a convenience store, and I find these kinds of games walk a tight line between effective and just plain boring. To me, the biggest determining factor is time. A certain amount of time is required to make the player feel the repetitive nature of the work, and once it lulls you into a false sense of security, that's when it pulls the rug. When done right, it can be very effective, and Dead Letter Dept mostly succeeds at this. As I said, the game took me 2 hours to complete, and while you're not typing for the entire 2 hours, it is the majority of your playtime. Like many indie horror games, it also features a number of different endings, and had I not stumbled my way into the good ending, I probably wouldn't have spent an additional 2 hours to unlock it. I think Dead Letter Dept works perfectly as a linear one-time experience. Despite the fact that the letters are somewhat randomly chosen and each run is different, the core gameplay loop of typing is just not compelling enough for replayability. There are definitely things I missed the first time through, and I would like to see how many other secrets I could find, but I don't feel it would be worth playing through the entire game again to find them. Lack of replayability aside, I was very impressed with my playthrough of Dead Letter Dept, and I would highly recommend it if anything I've said in this video appeals to you. I won't spoil the entire story for you, because unraveling the mystery is arguably the greatest aspect of the game, but I will give you some tips here to make the most of your playthrough. Firstly, when you first gain control in your apartment, read the letter next to the fridge and write down the address given to you. This changes on each run, and it's very important. Secondly, the game does support copy and pasting, so if you want to repeatedly type the same thing, you can use Ctrl-C and Ctrl-V, something that I wish I knew during my playthrough. Thirdly, take your time to explore your apartment and any other area the game allows you to walk around in. You might not find anything too important, but there's a lot of flavor text that you'll miss if you don't. I went back and checked the developers' previous games, and other than this, they've only made a free Christmas horror game called For Goodness Sake, which uses a very similar visual style to Dead Letter Dept. For such a short list of published games, there's clearly a lot of talent here, and I'm very excited to see what they cook up next.